So the other day I was having a discussion with a few women who'd been sexually abused, and we were talking about when all of a sudden they're watching a movie and or a TV show, or they could be listening to the radio, and all of a sudden the subject of childhood abuse or just sexual abuse in general comes up and how they react. Many of them said, well, they just turn it off or walk out of the room type situation. They all had different types of answers, but one woman is worth talking about today because I've seen this plenty of times. And she said, actually, she will seek out to watch something or listen to programs that talk about childhood sexual abuse. And so I asked her why. And she said, because it helps her to process her own childhood abuse. I said, can she explain the word process better to me? And she said that it helped her to remember her own abuse, as well as to deal with the emotions. And I said, well, what kind of emotions are you feeling as you're watching or listening to a program with it being discussed or it happening on the screen? And she said, definitely fear. Fear rises up inside of her, and stress and the remembering of being out of control and not being in charge of that situation. I said, and then what happens next? And she said, and then I remember that I'm not in that place anymore, that I am in control, and that I can control the fear and I can control the pain, and I can go ahead and take charge of that right now. I said, is that why you like to watch it? So that you could feel like you're in control. Her answer was yes, because she felt like she needed to be able to control. She lived her life very much always trying to control her children, her coworkers, everything. She would be the type of person you would call a micromanager. And her reason is because she was taking away the fear. She was controlling the anxiety. She was taking away the stress, but not even realizing, though she was taking care of that for herself, she was affecting others in her home. When she decided to continually watch something, they could see that she was becoming very fearful. They could see that her stress level was going up in her process. When she lived life out of control, when people made decisions at work and didn't check with her, when children went ahead and did things she did not have in the plans for that day, it put that stress on her. It put fear on her. That old sexual abuse trauma was being kicked in of not being in control, and that scared her so much. Watching the movie was just another form or way that she could continue to recreate a situation where she could take control and feel peace inside of her. This false peace that she had everything under control. I remember reading something that John Acuff wrote, and it was about him. He is such a good writer, and now he is somebody who plans and makes goals and is successful with it. But early on in life, he wasn't. In fact, he was a procrastinator, and he went ahead and put off things to the very last minute. And when he did, he felt like the best of him would come through. So if he had a paper that was due the next day at school and he was supposed to be working on it for 2 weeks ahead of time, he'd work on it, stay up all night long, and get the paper in. And usually he would do very good. And because of that, it sent him signals to his brain that he can be super highly motivated and creative under pressure. And so he kept living his life that way, making things get down to the end before he actually had to turn something in or had to produce something. Though he was very successful and his writing was really good and he was succeeding that way wise, his relationships were not succeeding because he was stressing everybody else out by not doing the work ahead of time, by not doing what was needed to do. He was believing this false lie that him being pressured to the last minute was the best thing for him. It was stressing out him, though he wasn't really focused in on that. He was focused in on the creativity and the spectacular ending that was going to happen when he got it all done. He was affecting his family. He was affecting his coworkers, his friends, you name it. This reminded me of the woman who practiced being in control to feel secure in life. She's not the only one. This is very common behavior for people to go ahead and think that here's the problem, and they're going to go ahead and fix it with some sort of habit of theirs that is not positive. Being in control of people is not positive. Turning in your work and being creative at the last minute when you had the time to work on the project ahead of time and not stress everybody else out is not a good habit to put yourself under. I'm not saying that it was wrong for the woman to listen to the programs that with sexual abuse on it or listen on the radio. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is her addiction to being in control. When it all started and is triggered by the moment she was out of control and somebody else was in control of her when she was sexually abused. When I explained this to the woman, she sat there pretty dumbfounded, as well as the couple of ladies that were there as well. And they started to think, when they're triggered, what is it that they do to feel more in control? And or what is a habit that they have done that has seemed right to fix a situation, but has caused others around them to actually suffer? A lot to think about. Thankfully, this Christian woman was already working with a counselor, and she could now take this aha moment and go in and start working through this at a counseling session. I'm so thankful she was open and willing to discuss it. It's wonderful, yet at times painful when God shows us things. But he does because he loves us and he doesn't want us to stay stuck there. For John Acuff, he was able to see what he was doing to his family, and he loved them more than himself and went ahead and started making those changes. And that turned him into a guy who now teaches people how to set goals. As for this woman, she's now going to be able to go ahead and work with her counselor so she could stop micromanaging and feel like she has to always be in control, when in reality, we cannot control people. We cannot control circumstances that happen all during the day. Remember, because he lives, it does change everything.